Hello, everybody. Welcome back and welcome if it's your first time here. Thank you so much, guys, for coming on in. And I just want to talk a little bit about a subject that's been on my mind quite a bit lately. It's something that I saw come up in a video recently that sort of changed the way I thought about things, and that was reinforced recently through a conversation I was having with a friend of mine, Ollie, over coffee the other day. Both of us are artists in a variety of different ways and try our best to create the best things we can. And just something that we've both noticed, and he was sort of encouraging me to dive deeper into, and I was encouraging him to dive deeper into, and that um, we've we sort of have recognized produces ultimately the best quality work is exploration, and it's something that's really necessary and something that gets left out a lot of the time because of the need for efficiency, the need to create as many products as possible as quickly as possible, and it ends up ultimately these other sort of mentalities end up a lot of time being counterproductive and producing potentially worse results, or just stunting your growth in a lot of ways. And I'm going to talk about why it's so important for growth and for creating great products to explore and to use methods that you might not otherwise use, and that you might actually even perceive as being counterproductive or slower, or maybe not as, what's the right word, like not as proper technically to create work. Why it's important that you do use those less technically correct, so to speak, methods of creating art. And I guess the way I'd get started with that is by using sort of a bit of an analogy here, or a bit of a story, maybe more so. Not exactly a full story, but just a quick parable. Maybe that's the right word. Probably not even the right word, but just an example. Maybe that's the way I'll put it. And that example is horses. And you're probably thinking, like, how the hell do horses connect to this? That's pretty weird. But ultimately, at some point, someone had to discover horses, right? Like someone somewhere discovered horses. And that person who discovered horses through whatever exploration they were doing at the time, they could have just stayed doing whatever they were doing. They might have been some kind of hunter gatherer, or they might have been, I don't know. I'm not going to take the time to go do the research right now about who specifically did it because it's not really important to the story. Basically, they could have been doing something else. They could have been hanging around, cleaning their house or hovel or tent or whatever they were living in, or growing crops, or doing the usual things they would have otherwise done with their day that they would perceive as productive. And with that time that they had perceived as productive, they would have probably been productive in the sense that they would have produced results that ultimately improved their lives. But no matter how much work they put in, they could never, ever, ever compare to or match up to the amount of productivity that was produced simply by the discovery of horses. In fact, completely changed the entire course of human history, decided battles, decided whole empires, just having horses. That's one of the reasons why the Mongol armies, let's say, for example, the Turkic Mongols and so on, and the steep armies, steep, however you want to say it, armies were so successful is that they were great on horseback. And, armies of cavalry in general were incredibly, incredibly successful, all because they had horses and the ability to ride them and use them. The same was true, I believe, for the Comanche Indians or Comanche Native Americans, Indians. I don't know which one's more correct, but in the United States, I believe it was the Comanches. I could be wrong. And there are probably several other groups as well that benefited from this, but they were getting their butts kicked left and right by the other tribes or groups. Again, don't know which one's correct. Who cares? They were getting their butts kicked, and they get horses, and then boom, they devastated the people that were beating them all up because they were like little guys. I think they were a lot shorter than the other tribes around them or whatever, short and stocky or something. Didn't have the physical capacity to go and step up to a lot of these taller, bigger tribes around them. And as soon as they get the horses, dude, these guys were like riding sideways on the horses, just blasting people with arrows, doing all sorts of cool stuff. And I think the same example could be given for guns or all sorts of other things. And of course, there are less violent technologies as well that would make great examples. But long story short, exploration is what drives innovation, and innovation is what allows us to not only become much more productive and do a lot more in a shorter period of time, but to also ultimately just have a higher quality product. There are so many things we can make today that no matter how efficient you would have been in the past, you wouldn't have been able to create just because the innovation did not yet exist. And so that's what I'm doing with this drawing here. I'm trying my best to just not think about. I mean, it's funny, right? Trying to not try, but forget the paradox for a moment of that aspect, and just enjoy yourself is the point I'm making. Just hop in with a pen or a pencil or whatever it is you're using. I'm going digital because for me, digital is generally the best way to explore. I can use as many colors as I want and I can just grab them. But I love exploring physically as well. You can do that too. Long story short, try new tools, try new things, try new methods that you wouldn't otherwise use because you'd be too uncomfortable if you were maybe getting paid to do them or other things like that when you have time. And you end up with things that you might be surprised with and happy with. And to be honest, I'm going to do it more and more because I've found that every single time I've experimented, almost every time at least, I've come out with something that I'm happier with than I would be with my normal work. Like I come away from this piece, maybe because I didn't have any expectations going in either, which is another huge thing. You know, expectations. God, I'll have to make another video on that. But I didn't have any expectations going in about what specifically I was going to get. And so coming out of this piece, like I was so happy and I felt that I had made one of my coolest character designs, and it took some of the least effort out of maybe any of my character designs I've ever done. And it also made some of the least sense, like this little raccoon dude who is also potion guy, so like a wizard dude with a wizard hat on. He's got potions. He's got a rapier like a musketeer and a big feather in his hat like a musketeer. An insanely huge feather, by the way. And yeah, I don't know. Just let me kind of like reinforce all these different ideas and try different things that I wouldn't have otherwise had the time or patience to test out. And it was all because I just decided like I wanted to try an experiment for the sake of today's video and just not think about what I was drawing, just go in and do whatever. I mean, I had actually filmed this before my conversation with my friend the other day, but coming back to it after our conversation, it just reminded me about how important it is to actually pursue and think about this subject and to maybe, go and spread it with you guys, because I think a lot of you will benefit from this in ways that you cannot even possibly perceive right now. This is also the way that you can discover your style. I mean, for example, let's say this style had become my style, so to speak. I hadn't ever thought to draw the way I'm drawing in this before. I mean, of course, I've layered colors before and I've, used cool colors for shadows and warmer colors for highlights and so on, but the colors in this don't really make much sense at all. The brushes I'm using, they leave little dots all over the place. Like that's something that I wouldn't usually do. I like being neat and tidy for the most part when I'm making characters and having a really clear design and really thinking about my design ahead of time and trying to make it make sense. But in this particular case, I didn't really do any of that. And I'm really happy with how it came out. And the same is true of the background. Like I didn't know what I was doing with this, but I ended up making this kind of like crystalline background here. It almost looks like he's in some sort of, crystal wizard tower. And it's all because I decided to just like test out new tools that I'd never ever use. I don't really use gradient tools that much. I've used them in the past, but not these line gradients, especially that create these like whole, I don't even know what I'd call them. These just like sharp edges all over the place. Really, really interesting, creates cool graphic style. And again, mixing that style with this more like, I don't know, this like crayon style or pastel style that I've got going with the raccoon guy. I would have never thought of that. It's just not me, at least not who I thought I was. And that's the other thing is like, there's so much about yourself even that you don't know until you let your subconscious express itself in your art. And that will never, ever happen as long as you are following a set pattern, a set trend. You will be stuck in your ways. You will not be able to evolve. You will require exploration. And that's why in this recent video I was watching, the guy was recommending that you do 3 styles of art. One style of art is this is a study. So, where you're expressly studying something specific, like a light study, for example, where you're kind of trying to copy for the most part, or not necessarily copy, but break down something you're looking at. Number 2 is, of course, your professional style work. So you've got your pattern that you follow and you just try to create the best quality work you can. And number 3 is exploration. And that's what I'm doing here. And ultimately what exploration does is it lets you develop the processes by which you create your developed pieces in the future. Anyway, that's really all there is to it, guys. I hope you enjoyed today's rant. And remember, please like and subscribe if you did. I'd appreciate you guys coming on back and watching some more videos in the future. Trying to build a community of friends here. And if you're here toward to the end of the video, yeah, you're awesome. So I'd like to have you back. Thanks. Bye.